get feedback, from you, the membership. So because we serve at your pleasure, and we want to make sure that the organization is strong and that the board is doing everything that we can do to get selected well positioned for the future. Don't be bashful.
So we'll open up the microphone. Maybe we won't. There we go. He's 100% right. What we're really here to do is not tell you, because we don't have anything to offer. But bottom line is really, because there is a changing landscape. There really is. As you guys all know, it's just not succession after succession after succession to family members. We've got people that are partnering up with guys that are maybe not in the industry and getting money from them. And what does that mean? I don't know. We used to just run down to the corner bank and get money, right? Once upon a time, you shook hands, bought them lunch, they'd say it's a good deal, and off you went. Well, that ship sailed a long time ago, right? And the end game is, how do we get money today if we want to expand or we want to sell, do anything? It's totally different. It's pretty rare you can run to the corner and borrow. They don't understand our business anyways. At least ours don't. So you're finding these different structures of things happening. And then, Selected's model has kind of always been where we basically, we have one funeral home, maybe we have another one, and we've got one, in our towns. But guys are, the world's a little different. Guys are expanding across borders. You might have a funeral home in Texas, you might buy one in Oklahoma, you might jump to Arkansas. Does that strategically mean that the guy's not a good fit for Selected? Just because he's aggressive and smart and can find out where to get money that maybe you and I don't know where to go. I don't know. So it narrows down to what kind of people, what kind of membership, what do we want this organization to be? So that's a big part of the dialogue that we'd like to get your view of the world on and see what you guys have to say. We got about 45 minutes to hear it all, digest it, and I think one of the things we alluded to yesterday was that we're working on a strategic plan. It's far from done, and this is a major cog in the wheel as it relates to giving guidance and direction on which way the organization should go. So, anybody got a thought? What are you seeing in your marketplace? What's going on out there? Just happy to share with the group. Here you go, Jim. Here you go.
Probably not on. Is it on? Yeah. Thanks, Chris. If you could help the membership get a little more context to this, I think it might be helpful. We have a bylaws and a code that kind of currently has us limited as to what kind of options we can even explore. Have you talked about internally among yourselves what other types of ownership groups might be compatible and deemed acceptable to where we currently are? Or is this truly a clean slate that we're just sharing thoughts and ideas?
Not a complete clean slate. Trying to stay between the buoys the best we can here and maybe push them a little bit, but trying to understand. I'm gonna let Sarah answer that though. She'll give you a better response than I can.
So currently the bylaws have specified that we have to keep within the buoys of privately owned and operated, but that's an extremely large area. So basically how that's interpreted legally is not a publicly traded corporation. So you have no interest of going down that road, obviously. But that leaves a lot of questions, and we've been interpreting that. So like private equity, no thanks. But there's a lot of other things that are not private equity out there where you have someone, maybe a group of guys who buy a firm or buy some firms, and some of them are in the business, some of them maybe are just, are not in the business, but want to learn, want to be in the business. You have some things like nonprofit cemeteries who can be quite very, very high quality, but are not a traditional family-owned funeral home, but they're not publicly traded or in any way. So could we consider something like that? Or, different options like that where it's not the small family-owned funeral home that's generational, but is that something that we could learn from or help? Can they offer us good insight, or maybe they can teach us how to get access to those resources, or, it's just, but in the end of the day, we need to have your buy-in that this could be an option for us, or that it's a valuable, how do we change Selected to sort of replace some of the, we've lost a lot of our big firms that traditionally we've learned a lot from about how to run our businesses. And, we need to both maintain Selected as an organization, but also, we need the best and brightest in the industry to learn from. So at the end of the day, we have to think about, like, what's that going to look like today?
Good morning. In this respect, I mean, the one big jewel of this association has been invitation to membership. And I rely heavily upon the ladies and the gentlemen and Chip within this room to continue to bring good firms to the table. Perhaps I could ask the board reps to give us an idea of what it is that you are being faced with. Are those members that have been members, is their ownership changing through acquisition of buying neighboring firms and bringing in equity partners or whatever? What is it that's brought this to a head for you folks to deal with at the board?
As you said, the conglomerates have, just really ravished our ranks, and we just can't, those firms are very difficult to replace. And because we've had a member, in that territory, which has been super strong forever, it's not like we can just go down to the next firm down the street, and we probably don't even want to go to the next firm, down the street. The whole goal is, again, we want to be an association that is made up of the very best, the very brightest, in funeral service that, can help us innovate, help us improve our business. As I said yesterday in my, comments, I mean, you are the brain trust, and, we want to make sure that brain trust is strong. And if there's anyone out there that fits, within the buoys, then, that's something that we can, that we should consider. I mean, no decisions, have been made, or, or anything of that nature. I mean, that's why we were coming to you this morning in this fashion to hear input from you. What are you thinking? What do you see? Good idea, bad idea? We haven't made any steps one way or the other, and so the first thing we wanted to do really is to to hear from the membership.
Yep. Can I jump in? Just so, Ernie, specific to your question, within the membership, when you come to these meetings and you interact with each other and you learn about growth opportunities, that's celebrated, right? So if you joined with one firm, with one location, and you ended up acquiring firms and growing, we would salute you and celebrate you. The challenge comes when someone tries to join, when someone has already done a lot of that and they try to join. And we've had a few inquiries from companies that are not family owned. They are privately owned, independently owned, who have locations in multiple states with different names. And so when we've considered those or had some conversations with fellow members, there's a lot of hesitation, like, whoa, they don't fit the model. That's not even a family. And so that's really where we're having, where we're seeing some challenges, is to say, is that still okay? If you did that within the context of being a member, it would be fine. So this is a little bit more about some of the unique structures, not only that we've seen, but are yet to come. I mean, there's clearly changes going on within ownership. We have a session later today where we're going to have 3 different members talk about things that they're doing to grow their business. Very traditional growth, within their communities, and growth that's a little unique, state by state by state. So we just would love to hear, and we've heard already from some members who have said, that's not a family-owned firm, that's not okay. Now, our bylaws and constitution don't require family ownership. So we want to hear from you. Some have shared their support of those types of structures. Some have shared their oppositions. So we'd love to hear from you how you're feeling about that. There's also employee-owned groups, right, where we're seeing groups that are owned by all of the employees that have multiple locations spread throughout. So that's kind of what we want to get some feedback on.
Thanks, Rob. This almost goes back to the presentation by the keynote speaker yesterday. Yes, and? Or yes, but. But puts up the hurdle and opens up the conversation. I think if we're going to continue to progress, I hope that we're going to be the yes and group, not the yes but group. Everyone's always resistant to change because change is always difficult. It's unknown. But let's hope that we continue to be a yes and group, okay?
Just to, I think we're looking for case studies. We're kind of talking in generalities. So let me just ask this. Richard Teacher's group, would that be one of them? That's private equity. That's private equity, okay. So are there any others that are top of mind that we would know that we could say? Because like with Richard Teacher's group, you know, he's in Christopher's backyard now. He's in my front yard and my backyard and my side yard. And soon to be on the other side of the yard too.
Yeah, I mean, and the board has been very clear. The private equity ownership is again, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It really doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the model. You know, there's been a number of our members who have moved into that, obviously, and have said to us, "Man, I wish I could come back. I wish there was a way for me to come back." But that just doesn't fit. This is much more still, you know, within the independent ownership structure, but it's a different structure with locations and also I want to make sure you know that those members that have the premium level membership where there's a territory, that's obvious. If you have a territory and some, whether it's a mom and pop firm or a large firm, where there's a conflict in that territory, that's not what we're looking to change here. This is really much more about bringing in potential members that have different ownership structures than what we typically see.
Just to speak to your example, I mean, I think we do in the state of South Dakota have an example of a group called Pioneer, and one of their members, or one of their funeral homes are a member of Selected, but they're strictly an employee-owned group that have funeral homes in South Dakota and Wyoming, and that already fits within the bylaws of Selected. And so I think maybe we take their model. Who are those people that are in our country that would model their structure and be allowed to be in Selected? But even within that, and I spoke to Rob about this, so we have a group like that only has one funeral home amongst 20 some that are in their group. How do we get those others to participate in Selected? You know, because I do feel like that's also a big opportunity. You know, I could easily so we have 4 funeral homes with 3 different names in 4 different communities. I could have easily only had one of our funeral homes join Selected, would have saved a ton of money. But I chose, I mean, sometimes I'm a little too direct and too honest, but we chose that we saw the benefit and we were going to use all the resources of Selected in all of our funeral homes. So we made the financial commitment to have the Selected logo on all of our funeral homes and chose to pay more so that they could all be included. And so I think it's a 2-part thing. It's not just going out and finding what we don't have currently, but what is within us currently that we can build off and get to come on board of membership. And so, you know, as far as growth for our organization, I see it as twofold. How can are there other structures within Selected, like the Pioneer makeup, that we can get other funeral homes within their group to join? And then are there other groups like Pioneer within the country that already fit within the bylaws of Selected? How do we get them to join? But we all know to be independent and not be bought up by something bigger is hard. And so we have a choice, like the gentleman over there said, to say, and, you know, how are we going to be what we say we are, the biggest, the best leaders in our profession? And if we're still here, we have to make that commitment to doing that. And that will require a lot of change and a lot of uncomfortableness. But growth comes when we're uncomfortable.
Hey, good morning, guys. So I'm Nathaniel Billow. I'm from Akron, Ohio. I'm Chip's son. So when it comes to alternative ownership structures, I think what we need to do and what the board needs to do, we as an association, what we need to do is we need to scrutinize their intentions, their motivation. Why would they want to be a member of Selected? Do they believe in continued learning? Do they believe in progressivism within funeral service? Do they believe that it's so important to take care of the families in their community like it's the most important thing in the world? For larger companies, I don't know that that's why they would want to join Selected. What we want to avoid, right, is allowing the fox into the hen house. And I can give you two examples, very large, very successful family-owned funeral homes. The Newcomer Funeral Service Group, based out of Kansas, and then Rawlings Funeral Service Group, based out of Georgia. Both are very large, 100+ rooftops for Rawlings. I think Newcomer has maybe 40 or 50. They would meet the criteria of being family-owned. Quick show of hands, how many of you feel like they would be a good fit for Selected? So I think we all can agree there. The problem that we have and the difficulty is we have to get very specific for the criteria. Why would one group be allowed in versus another? Why would one ownership structure be allowed in versus another? And unfortunately, it is so murky and it's such a gray area. It's going to require us to be very judicious on the front end and to scrutinize every single group. Why would they want to be in? What is their incentive? Because for groups like Rawlings, his plan is very simple. It's to continue to acquire, and he's going to flip his entire business for a very large multiple. But other structures like employee-owned groups and ESOP, things like that, many of us have friends that didn't have kids that went into the business. So one alternative is to sell their employees. I think that's a structure that we think, you know, that sounds pretty decent. They could learn from something from Selected, and we could probably learn something from them. So I just think we need to be very cautious. It's a very slippery slope. You guys know the Billows. We believe in independent, family-owned, closely held funeral service, and I think many of you do too. But we also have to realize as an association, I mean, we've lost, what, 50% of our members in 15 or 20 years? So there's going to be consequences if we don't adapt and change. And it's up to us to decide whether we want to make those changes or not. Because unless we start admitting other firms, other different structures, we're going to be unfortunately looking at a smaller, leaner Selected, fewer staff, fewer resources, and it's going to maybe go back to the way it was 30 years ago when there was a much smaller staff and we didn't have the programming and support that we do now. So it's all about trade-offs.
Good morning. I just want to relate a quick story from yesterday. I was downstairs in the displays. I'm from Arthur Erickson from Connecticut, small little state. And one of our members from the other side of the state approached me. I hadn't seen him in a while. And he says, "What do you think about so-and-so joining? So-and-so's funeral home is directly between mine. Mine are north and south. He's right in the middle. My father would have always said no. The territories, whatever they are, wouldn't have allowed it." And I said to him, "I'm going to think about it," but I knew what my answer was. And because what we're talking about here, even though he's in my side yard, he's progressive, he's young, he's energetic, he's a good operator, and I think he'd be a good fit. So I'm going to drop down all those old barriers and let him in. I hope he's here next year.
There you go, Bob.
And I used to be in that study group. Bob Smith from Chicago. Welcome to my town. I hope you're all having a good time. But what is Selected about? What is NSM about? Was to make us the best, to get us to grow, become better firms. We're a victim of our own success. As our firms through the years have grown, gotten bigger, they don't fit our style anymore. I'll go back to the time, maybe a few of you old timers remember groups like Pierce Brothers out in California that was a member of Selected. Big firm, got too big. No place to go as far as transferring ownership. Another firm, Stewart Enterprises, was a member of Selected, got big. Where does it go? Where do we go? You know, I've got two youngins here taking over, but if they're not here, don't want to work in the business every day, where do we go? We get Jay leaving the business, running it on his own, doing something else, drawing a salary. We have to change the way we look at our business and how we're going to do it. As I said, we're victims of our own success. As we grow, we take over firms around us, we start moving away from the traditional Selected NSM back in the day. So we need to open our minds to get bigger and better. And don't worry about competition. I look around the room, it's John Haben, who's got a funeral home, what are we, 3 miles apart maybe, something like that. We've both been members of NSM and Selected for 40, 50 years. There was another member a few miles north of John, again, only 3, 4 miles. He's dropped out of Selected, but you can all work together. You don't have to have non-competes. You don't have to have people not being your competitor. But I'll say there's, pick a number, 13, 15, 18,000 funeral homes in the country. Why can't 10% of them be Selected members? There's got to be that many who are good firms, prime firms, and should be in members. So there's a potential of another pumping us back up to 1,000, 12, 1,400. When Dave and I were on the board in the late 80s, that's what we had. We had 900 full-service firms and what was it, about 1,000 branches, something like that. That's what we ought to aim for, try and get back to that. The other thing is we need to find a way to finance growth. Years ago, we were talking about Monumental Life was one of our big firms that we pushed. I said at the time, get them to finance our properties. That didn't go very far, but there are people out there who will do this.
Mike Pearson, Calgary, Canada. It's good, important conversation. I think one of the other firms that I'm thinking of, I wish was here, was Todd Lombard. I miss him. And once again, I don't know enough about his situation, but I don't think he qualifies because once again, private equity. And I think he'd be a firm that in some ways might actually work, but once again, once it gets too big, too many locations, it doesn't work. So is there an ability to have some small private equity firms that could be part of Selected until they get to that point where they start crossing boundaries. So that's question number one. But the financing issue is the other one. And I'm thinking about our own business. You know, we've been in Selected a long time, but we were not worth anything when we joined. We just had no net worth in our business, but now it's quite large and we're trying to move it to the next generation. And I'd be far better off personally to turn around and sell it to one of the large corporations than try, and I know that it's a steep discount to get it to the next generation. And how do we bridge that gap? How can I get it to the next generation without me personally having to take such a hit on everything that has been built over the last number of years? And that's been thanks to this group here that's been able to happen. So is there a middle ground between having to take a steep discount to get it to the next generation, or just selling it and selling my soul to the devil and giving it to one of these big corporations? Because I don't want to do that, but at the same time, I know that personally I'm going to be losing.
Peter Burton from Erie, Pennsylvania. Just a couple comments. A long time ago, we used to get a fax from your group if there was a funeral home that wanted to. Maybe we get an email now. I really have confidence in the board and the staff that if they have a member that is up for being in our group, that you send out a fax. You do what we did in the olden days, and we all voted on it, you know, in that group. I believe that is correct. So I have faith. It's a good topic, but I'm going to throw out a couple other things. We had 6 funeral homes at one time. Today we have 4. We do about 750 calls. So we're at the top end of the membership fee. To bring my family here, it costs $5,000. I know 2 of my friends that are in Select that haven't been here in years because it costs a lot of money. They have kids in college. So I want to go to the nice places. I want to go to the nice towns, but sometimes it's just not affordable to be a member of Select. I think that's one thing we have to look at. Our only expenses at Select are our rent and our staff. So not to be the elephant in the room, but I've had to cut staff. We've all had to cut staff. Cremation rates gone up and we have less to work on, so we're working harder and smarter. Is Select working harder and smarter? Is their rent in line? Is their staffing in line? I remember when there was, and you know, my dad would say there was only 4 employees there. There's 18 now. So I don't want to be the, you know, the elephant in the room or the bad bear, but I think we need to relook at all that as a board. What it costs to be a member. We try to be an online member. We've been a member for 100 years, by the way. So we've been paying these dues for over 100 years, which I'm very proud of. I got great friends in this room. But when I sat down for the opening meeting, I watched a few-minute video, 10-minute video of all the vendors. We used to show the members. We used to show 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Yeah, it's printed in the book, but who looks at the book? I can't even get a list of the members that are here. Sometimes you like to connect with members. I got to go on a QR code and find out who's here. I think we've lost focus of what we need. And again, I don't want to be the bug in the room, but I think we need to look at that. And I think I'll leave it at that.
So I'll just make a quick comment, which, well said. I mean, everything's on the table. There's nothing that's out of bounds. So you're not stepping in any mess kit here. You're good. But one of the things you got to contemplate is, do you want a leaner Selected? That means less programs, less events, less resources. I mean, it's our association, guys. I mean, we get to make that choice. But if we start moving staff, we start moving overhead and things like that, you got to determine what you don't want, because it's going to happen. But I can tell you this, just as the board chair, fiscally, we're fine from a cash flow point of view. And those preferred providers are a big part of that. I mean, they write a lot of checks and it isn't just when they throw their name up on a wall and saying, hey, I want in on the Holy Grail. It's a tough vetting process. It really is, just like membership is. So you got to decide what we want to be. You want to be leaner and meaner? We can go down that road, but you got to know what you're asking for. But it's okay to say that. Just know what the other side of that quarter is. Yes, sir.
you know, Select is not the only group that's having membership issues. You know, OGR is having a lot of the same problems that we're experiencing. I know I've talked to several OGR members. I happen to be a member of both organizations. And it seemed like there's so much common ground between the two groups. And, you know, I don't know if we could share convention space with them. I don't know if we could share resources with them at annual, you know, meetings and try to, you know, you get more people, you can scale up. There's some savings with the scale. There's talks about territories having, you know, so many miles. Sarah, what's the territory? Depends on population. And there's some questions, is that even legal? And so I don't know if that's been tested or not before. You know, I'm hoping our membership's not based on anything that's not legal. But there's a lot of questions about both groups have some it's all independent members in both groups. We have some commonalities. The educations that we do are common. You know, I just see some national groups sharing convention space, and they use the more people that show up, the more vendors that show up, reduce the overall cost of events. And I don't know if there's some savings or some kind of way we can do something together with OGR, and where independence can still thrive. And you know, I don't know if Selected gobbles them up, or we can coexist and do some things together with the cost savings. I mean, these conversations have been going on for years, and y'all may have some answers that I'm not privy to, because I believe that you all talk to that group more often than I believe. So anyway, just some thoughts.
Good morning. I'm Glenn Taylor from Winsboro, Kentucky with Glenn Family Services, and I have the unique distinction or mentally ill diagnosis of having been president of both Selected and OGR. They are, in my opinion, two distinctly different organizations, but that's really neither here nor there. I find myself listening to this from the standpoint of a traditionalist, but James Lee Burke described a traditionalist as someone whose thoughts are dictated by dead people. So I think we need to break out of that a little bit. A phrase that's used far, far too often is thinking outside the box. Anybody can do that. That's not difficult. The challenge is to think inside the box, within the parameters that we have, within the situation with which we find ourselves, and come up with a solution that's going to meet the needs of this membership. There are challenges. You know, I listen to Boyd and I say, gee, the OGR member now in my community is my competitor. I still belong to OGR. They just happened to bring him in without telling me. But that's, again, neither here nor there. There is a challenge here, and it has to be dealt with a logical balance, with an understanding of what our expectations are as an organization and what our abilities are to meet those expectations. Some of the things that I've heard here this morning, my knee-jerk reactions, I don't like that very much, but maybe I do. Maybe I haven't thought about it enough. But I think this is fraught with danger if it is not carefully and thoughtfully considered from the point of view of all of the members, not just a small group of the members, and I'm not saying there is even a small group. And then I will make one gratuitous observation before I sit down. Thane, you referred to the fox in the hen house. And I appreciate what our providers do for us, but Selected is in real danger of becoming the hen in the fox's den.
I'm Lance Pauley with Hardin Pauley Funeral Home in Eustis, Florida. We're about 30 miles north of Orlando. And we've been very blessed the last couple of years for John and Claudia Kepner to be able to come to our Florida Roundtable meetings. Our Florida Roundtable meetings are very open, and we discuss everything except price. But we're very, very open and candid in our discussions. And I would encourage all of you over the next year to really do your best to attend your state roundtable meetings where they're close and intimate and very open and honest conversations. Florida has 3 established and financially sound associations. The Florida Morticians, which are predominantly African-American members, the Independent of Funeral Directors of Florida, which are all only independent owners, and the Florida Cemetery Cremation and something association, used to be the Florida Funeral Directors, that is recognized by the National Funeral Directors Association. And to lead in this, and I'd be glad to answer any questions, but we've been very open and honest. It's been 10 years that the Independent Association has dealt with what we're talking and trying to define what is independent. They just this last year, Board of Directors put it in writing on what the Independent Association in Florida defines as an independent operator, which took Foundation Partners out as a member, and looking at the finances and how all that was going to affect the association was all considered in all of that and how they wrote that up. But as John was there in our meeting, I looked around, knowing what I know from being a past president of the Independent Association, the way the cemeteries for the Perpetual Care Trust Funds, if any of us owned our own cemeteries in our communities, and the way we trust the money through the trust in the state of Florida, I looked around that room and there was a lot of millions of dollars of cash that were in that room where John was at, because they're the top operators who don't spend a lot of that cash that we're legally able to spend and take out of our trusts, which makes every one of us very, very vulnerable to be purchased. And that we would be the top representations that are left in the state of Florida to do that. That makes us very, very vulnerable. And yet we're very, very committed to everything that you all have talked about here today. And I've done the best I can to try to keep Rob informed on what we've been doing in Florida and how the independents have been dealing with this. And I would encourage all of you through your state roundtable meetings to do the same. Thank you.
So another question I think we need to ask ourselves is, why do we need to add new members? Because I think being selected, having very high standards to get in, it implies that it's exclusive and it's small. Not every independent firm is a good fit for selected. If we need to add members to justify our fixed costs to cover our overhead, that may not be a good rationale for why we need to open the doors. However, if we look around this room, and we know there's a lot of very smart people that are no longer selected, they've sold their businesses. But if we look around this room and we believe that the cumulative intelligence, the tacit knowledge, the tribal knowledge of this association is not enough, it's not good enough, we need more smart people, then that's why we would want to add members. Because I use an example, I'm a golfer. Augusta National's the most exclusive country club in the United States. They're not out there banging on the door saying, hey, we need to bring in new members to cover our overhead. It's exclusive. Selected's always been exclusive. It can be larger, it has been larger. But we have to ask ourselves, why do we need new members right now? Or do we need them at all?
You're right. So I would probably say this, it's not a financial thing. I mean, it really isn't. We'll be just fine if we don't do anything different than we're doing today. It's just, what do you want us to be? But here's the question is, we do have incredible knowledge in this room and in this association, incredible. But there's others out there. They just may not be the guy that bought Mr. Jones's funeral home and says, hey, I got this roof and I'd like to be there. He might be a guy that's a funeral director, hypothetically speaking, and he goes out and he gets with Mr. Smith, and who's not a funeral director, and he says, you know, I want to buy this funeral home, but I need some money. And Bob says, you know, I've got access to some funds I got sitting over here. What do you need? And then Bob says, here, let me put the down payment down. Let's get this done. Next thing you know, Bob's a partner, but he's not a licensed funeral director. So then the guy goes out and he buys another one, and they say, hey, this is kind of cool. Next thing you know, they've got 6 or 8 funeral homes, and they've got one operator that came to the party. You know, he's progressive, he's doing things, they're growing, everything that we would ever want. Do we exclude that guy? Does he fit our model? Does he not fit our model? That's the hard part, is guys that have already started to do this, and that's really what we're talking about. It's not the T-Tricks or the Soapers or, you know, all the guys that are doing all what they're doing. God bless them for what they're doing, but they don't fit. But we encourage it once you're in, to Rob's point, is grow your business. That's why you're here, right? We want to help you do that, you know. Whether it's helping you find money through, you know, insurance, you know, to Old Monumentals of the world or whatever it is. My comment is that's all real, but there's guys that have things to offer to us as well. They just don't have that mom and pop model that we may have came from. And so we've not made any decisions to do anything. In fact, we're kicking the can down the road a little bit, trying to make sure that we absolutely talk about vetting people and people do come to us and ask, hey, we'd love to be a part of this. You guys are it. I've got 6 or 8 funeral homes, but they're in 3 states. What do you think? It's like, I don't know. Where's your money coming from? What's your motivation to your thing? The vetting for them is way worse than just a simple one. And Sarah can attest to it because she gets the task of chasing all this down. But my comment is it's hard to just, where's those buoys and how do they fit? But I can assure you one thing, it's not a financial motivation, it isn't. And if we ever had to run this association differently, because we were up against it, to Boyd's point, we can jack dues up and see who's behind, or we can manage the expenses, right? If we got to scale, we'll scale, if that's what we want to do. We want to be leaner and meaner, it's done and done. I mean, we can all figure out how to do that. But it isn't about being fiscally that we need this to keep, you know, feeding the cow.
Well, Al, I was going to ask a question, but you answered it. But I want to make sure I understand completely. None of this is financially motivated. Is that correct? Thank you.
We really just want to make sure that when we get the best and the brightest that are out there, and they ask to be in the association or somebody recommends them, you know, how do it's just not the same traditional model. That's the only issue. And how do we bring them in without causing a, you know what, storm?
Now, this is much more about our drive to continue to add quality, not quantity. And it's our effort to be proactive. We are being approached, you know, with unique structures, and we're trying to get your sense, which I want to thank you for being here and being open and sharing, and being open to some new ideas, because that's what we want to be able to do. And the board made it very clear. You know, we've had several meetings this year where we've had conversations, and the board has said, we got to make sure we talk to the members. We just sent a survey out to 1,600 contacts within the organization. We're trying very hard to collect your feedback so that we can make good decisions. But I would reiterate as well, this organization has been operating very lean for the last 3 years, right? We've all gone through some pretty challenging times, and I'm awfully proud of the work that the staff has done to make sure that we've not had to make dramatic changes. So we are not, somebody said 18, we've never had 18 staff. So, you know, I've been running this company for 16 years and working awfully hard to make sure that we keep everything lean, but at the same time, you know, deliver programs to you. Programs that we offer, one of the things we hear from members far too often is, my gosh, there's so many different things we can do. You know, we're trying to make sure we're offering that to you. But again, I think this is much more about being proactive so that we can continue to bring quality to you. Because, you know, when you have an opportunity to interact with a new member, you learn from them. Right? We talk about that all the time, that members teach each other and learn each other simultaneously. That's what That's what makes selected selected.
Can I let one cat out of the bag?
Sure. Make sure the dog's okay with it.
Is the dog okay? So I will say this, just because, dues and money it's popped around here a few times. It's going to happen anyway. You're going to hear this. We voted absolutely not to increase dues next year. So you won't get a dues increase. We're holding the line. It's not going to happen. Whatever they may be right now is what they'll be in 2024. So we're operating under the same basis of income to the association that we've had this year. So just FYI, so we are trying to be fiscally responsible to the point of, not what we need, but the board pushes back hard. Rob works hard to meet the needs of what we say we need to, what we need to run this association. And we're strong enough to say no, hey, no, we're not doing that one. So dues aren't going to move. So collectively speaking, to all the members, just FYI, I think that's kind of a good step in the right direction. So just thought you should know that. Dane?
Anything else anyone has that they would like to talk about? Anything else anyone is seeing out there that keeps them up at night, or? Mr. Billow.
Key to ongoing viability is getting members off their butt and getting them to meetings and to participate in the association. I think one of the things that's most disturbing over the last decade, and you can include COVID in this, the NSM membership is all dressed up and they don't go anywhere. They don't go to the roundtables, they don't go to the annual meeting, they don't participate in functions and activities the way that they should. You have no idea what the hidden assets are in this organization that aren't being utilized. And, this has been a tough decade for me. In my study group, I've lost 4 members that have left because they didn't have succession plans internally. And I think that needs to be, again, addressed repeatedly. I bought a fellow selected member 5 years ago. It's the best decision my company's ever made. I think we have to have our tentacles out, look at the quality operators in our community, invite them into membership, look at their business structures. Are they a target of our own acquisition? Growth can be acquisition or it can be organic, but we got to look at everything. And you'd look at this group today and the thoughts that have been shared. There is so much more that this organization can be if we open our minds up to what a competitor is, Art, and take a look at how we can go from 100 years to 105 years to 110 years to 120 members, or to 120 years of selected excellence. It's what it's about. I mean, make yourself look attractive to your neighbor. Make your neighbor look attractive to you. Make something happen.
With that being said, to piggyback off of what Chip said, I believe that we need to have more roundtable opportunities. I think with the getting rid of the management summit, which was more affordable, I think we need to have, I missed Chip's roundtable, wanted to go, staff wanted to go, couldn't go. And so with our groups being large, ours is from Indiana to Maryland, and if we have more roundtable opportunities, I think we would have more participation, because someone said earlier, annual is pricey. And some of us can, some of us can't sometimes, but I think we need to have more roundtable opportunities.
Well, we would applaud that. Members drive roundtables, so please, and I'm going to make remarks tomorrow and implore you to please consider hosting. But we are all for that, to bring more in.
We have time for maybe 1-2 more questions. The incomparable Jim Bush.
No, I'm just going back to Michael's comment. I think he's talking about the heart of the problem. Because I'm fourth generation legacy. First two generations transferred by death. Third, my father said we're not doing that. Innovator, you heard the story before, 25 years old. I got the keys to the company, paid dearly for it, by the way. Transferred generationally though, but creatively, 10-year buyout of the business, 15-year after that real estate purchase, 25-year deal to transfer from the third generation to the fourth generation, right? So I have a friend in this room that when I talked a couple years ago and shared the retirement of my brother and how we came to fruition of that, that was a lot of hard work. But he took one thing I said there and went and found some of the financing that I found to get the creative element to be able to fund my brother's retirement. It was a great decision for our company, great decision for my brother, love him to death. But I think, you look at the format of the meeting structure this week again, where are the case studies, somebody who's grown their business, acquired a business. I've bought and sold businesses. We've had 11 rooftops at one point, we're down to 8. Those were all strategic decisions that keep me up at night, Bill McGreevy. Those are the things that keep me up at night is making sure that I'm not just a large operator, but I'm a smart operator. So I just think that our content at these meetings too need to help the real issues of what we have, because there's 2 brothers that sold their business last year that I invested time in personally to try and have them resolve their conflict. One wanted the highest price, one wanted the legacy transfer. They couldn't get it done. Great selected member, no longer here. So I think, the elephant's in the room, but we never talk about at these meetings really what we need to do is like, what's a good succession plan? Because I'm at that point, I have 3 children and I have hopes for one. But what happens when that one says, it's not my cup of tea, Dad? I have a decision to make. So, I look in the mirror and say, will I be in this room in 5 years? I don't know. I think there's a lot of creative ways to do it. I'd love to hear more about ESOPs and, got some great relationships in our marketplace. Is that a path for me? But I think Michael, the same thing is the value of what we've created through this association. The brain power that, I've utilized over the years to grow my organization is a direct result of Selected Independent Funeral Homes.
Okay, we want to thank everybody for coming out this morning. I think the discussion has been robust and we will continue this discussion. I think everyone has the same aim, and that's to make sure that Selected is the absolute very best. Al, you have one more?
One more, last one, Mr. McGreevy.
Oh, boy. I don't want to cut into your time, my friend. Just real quickly, listening to Jim and the others, and I couldn't agree more with them. And Rob, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but several months back, I was talking to Rob about this, and I said, Rob, I'm sorry, but if I'm going to go to Selected and hear how, boy, I'm doing things just great, we got a new funeral coach, we got new carpet, that doesn't work for me. And he agreed, when we talked about that. It's a very, very serious game out there. And if you don't think the public companies aren't having their meetings right now this morning to figure out how in the world they're going to take away some of our market share, they're working very hard, and they're working very smart. And we have to work just as hard and just as smart, if not harder and not smarter. And we've got some things that they don't have that we can do. And we've got a session, sorry for the plug, maybe at 10 o'clock here today. And it's going to be talking about some pretty serious stuff about how to grow your business. And, I think people come here for the social aspect, and so do I. Come to a nice place, Chicago. We went out to the Ralph Lauren place last night for dinner, had a great dinner. Okay, that's all fun. But I'm here to learn something. I met with 3 consultants privately. I've got a relationship with them. And I need to get traction under what I'm doing, because we've quadrupled the size of our business in the last 40 years since I've been on, and I'm only getting started. So I've got hopefully a couple of decades to go, and I don't plan on selling unless I have to. And I don't plan on making a decision that I have to sell. I plan on just growing the company and diversifying and being stronger and safer and more profitable. And so let's all band together, be very smart about what we do, and make Selected the strongest organization it's ever been. There's always been attrition. There always will be attrition. That's part of the game. But from this point forward, we've got to be really smart about what we do and learn the best practices and put them, execute the plan, put them into play. Thanks, Al. Sorry, I've had a little too much coffee, okay?
Well said. Okay, thank you. Please feel free to go have a little breakfast or a little refreshment, and please let's meet back and be ready for the next session. Thank you again so much for your attendance this morning. Really appreciate it.